Hello once again, it's Mart with another Max-Q update on the J-3 Cub Restoration. You might notice I'm using a little wider angle lens today. That's so that I can easily show you this new shirt that I just introduced over the weekend. Airplane mode, it's over at shirtberg.com. The shirt's available both in this version, which has the large graphic on the front and a small one on the back, or the version that has the little one on the front and the big one on the back. I have a lot of people that tell me they like the big graphics on the back. So anyway, if you're interested in that, please go check out shirtberg.com. That's a great way to support the things I'm trying to do here with sharing the progress on this J-3 Cub restoration. I didn't get as much done last week as I'd hoped. However, this wing has all the stuff, all the goodies are back in, and in fact, I'm ready to trammel this wing. So what I've done is I've set up a camera over there, and I've got my phone on a tripod over there, and so we're gonna see if I can actually show the entire process of trammeling this wing. I may wind up compressing a bunch of that because I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. It's going to be kind of interesting to see. So the idea here though is I will tighten up all of these diagonal wires while keeping the wing, the two spars, in proper alignment so that the wing is entirely square. And if you didn't see the video from before, the reason that's so important, where the wing attaches, this being the left wing, this is the rear spar attach, and up there at the front spar attach, those points on the fuselage are very, very fixed. So we can't have these two spars shifted in relation to each other and still have it fit onto the fuselage. So we do that with the trammeling system of verifying that we have everything square so that the relationship between the two spars is exactly where it needs to be. So you'll be able to see that process once I start using the trammel points, and it's a little bit slow and tedious, so obviously I'm going to speed up certain elements of this, but maybe I can show some details along the way. Anyway, let's just see how it goes. Okay, so now the process is going to get started, and the first thing to take note of here is in the wing you can see the yellow compression struts. If you saw the previous videos, I had pulled those out, sandblasted them, I primed and painted them, put them back in. But they're called compression struts, and there's a very clear reason for that. So the diagonal wires that I'm working on here for tightening up, if you think about it, when those are nice and tight, they're gonna be pulling those two spars closer together significantly. So the compression struts literally are there to take that compression load and resist, basically. So the compression struts essentially create a box. There's the two spars then that become one side of the box, and then there's two compression struts, one at the end of each bay, and that creates the other two sides of basically the rectangle. And so the wires going diagonally, when we would have that all square so that it's a 90-degree angle between the compression strut and the spar, then the wing would be all square. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to get those wires tight and have the two spars in a completely square arrangement. So like there, I was just giving the wing a little jiggle. I got some of the tension on the first set of wires, not all the way yet, but it's kind of like tapping on an altimeter to just loosen everything up. So anyway, now I'm measuring the diagonal distance then, and the critical part there is you got to know where you're measuring from. As it turns out, on this wing, the spars actually have on the top flange, there's like a nail set that's been put into the aluminum, and it lines right up like it should with the center line of those yellow compression struts, because that's your reference point. And I don't know if those indentations were put in at the factory, or I mean, I almost assume they would. They're extremely methodically done. And but my understanding in the past has always been that you wouldn't want to put such a indentation in the aluminum, but I have a feeling that it's an approved practice. I have heard of other airplanes that have a similar situation on their aluminum spars. So anyway, it sure makes this process easy, because those pointy ends of the trammel points can drop right down into that little indentation, and you know exactly where you're at. So basically you do one direction and you get the trammel point set to perfectly match, so it drops into those holes at both ends, and then you take it to the opposite angle direction and see if they match. And of course at the start they're probably not going to match, and then that's the whole reason why you're going to tighten one wire more first. They start out slack, so you start tightening one to help bring those two spars, those two diagonal dimensions, to a point of being the same length. And at the same time you're putting tension on, because when you're finished with each bay, you want to have a specified amount of tension on those wires. They don't want to be too slack, but you sure don't want to have them too tight that they're putting stress on everything. So so the goal there is to have both of those diagonal measurements be the same, and then have the tension on the wires be some specified amount. We'll get to that here in a minute. But so I work to tighten up a wire, and then I verify that it is bringing those diagonal measurements closer together. It's not going to match right away, most likely, but you at least verify that, yep, it's getting closer together. So now you know you're going the right direction, and you keep putting additional tension on that same wire. You have to make sure the other wire is loose enough to allow that one to pull tight, and in the process the other one starts to snug up, so in that sense it's all kind of simple in a way once you get used to what you're trying to accomplish, and trying to stay ahead of what's going on. And I can see where if you don't really understand the process and you're just really going at it, it could get really boggling and confusing. But as it turned out, this is only the third airplane I've ever done this on. The first one was back in the 80s, and the second one was in the 90s. So I don't have a lot of experience at this, but it does seem to go pretty well. So what exactly am I doing then to tighten up the wire? Well, so we've got some imagery coming up here in just a second that will show that the wire, when it attaches to the spar, it does so via a couple of different pieces. So there's, first off, there's the little gray nut that's actually on the wire. That's a lock nut that's going to eventually be tightened down to keep anything from moving. But then the next thing, the yellow long tube, is a threaded chunk, and the wire goes right through the middle of it, and it functions as a nut essentially, and it's captured by that loop that's then bolted to a tab that's bolted to the spar. So basically what you're doing is you're putting a wrench on that yellow, and you can see here there's this little wrench that's fitting on the flats. There's two little flats there on the one side of that yellow tube, and so now you can turn that, and when you do, of course, that's moving it down the threads, and you can put tension on the wire. So basically you do that a quarter to a half turn at a time, sometimes a full turn, as you see what you think you need, and then I stop and verify that the measurements are getting closer and that I haven't gone too far. And then once you get to the point that you have the square nature, so those diagonal measurements are going to match, and you have the tension where you think it ought to be, there is a specified process by which you can check that. So the Piper recommendation is that you use actually a fish scale. So it's a spring-loaded scale, and you actually hook it on the wire, and then you put about 15 pounds of pull pressure on it, and then it should flex about a ½ an inch away from the other wire that's going underneath it. So here's a really good picture of that. And I'm pulling about 13 pounds or thereabouts, and as I got right to 15, that wood block fell out because it's matching the ½ inch. So that was working out right on. And so you do the pull up on the one, and then pull down on the other wire just to make sure that they are indeed balanced. And then I typically, after I would do, to me, the whole process is check, double check, and triple check. So you work your way to where you finally have it square, then you tweak the tensions, and then you'd go back and double check the square to make sure that nothing has changed. And so once that's accomplished, then you actually have one bay done. There are 4 bays altogether in this wing between the compression struts. That outermost bay is actually spans a further distance, so those wires are longer than the other ones. Not that it matters, it's just that it is different. So the process there went pretty slick. It didn't fight me too much. One thing I've noticed is because you may be thinking an awful lot and there's one end, your other end moving around, front of the wing, back of the wing, it's easy to get confused, and sometimes you can actually go the wrong way. So you just like, well, hey, that's getting worse. Obviously I did something backwards. It doesn't hurt anything. You just have to figure out what exactly is needed, and then you do it. So there I am, just pulling down, verifying the tension on the wire that's on the bottom side. I mentioned in the previous video, I don't know that it's really critical, but I've seen people certainly suggested that in each bay, the one wire obviously has to go over the other wire. So you do the same wire in the same direction above or below, if that makes sense. So, but I can't imagine that it actually matters, but maybe it does. So it certainly seems to be a good discipline there. And then after I had those basically the diagonal measurements right, the tension right, then I just for now hand turn down the lock nuts, which those will get set yet. And I'll also go back and touch up paint and such, because when you use that wrench, you knock off a little bit of paint. So I think right here, I'm on that outer bay still, and I'm doing the final double check of that. And then I've got it all sped up here, because essentially it's just repeating the process now with the next bay inboard, which is the one that the struts attach out there in that area. It doesn't really change anything, just means there's a few more components that are in that bay. But it's exactly the same procedure. And then moving inboard from there to the next one, and in fact at some point in time, I don't remember, but I know for sure at the very end I go, well, there I am back outboard, making sure that outboard hasn't changed, and it never did. And so working all the way here to the inboard section of the wing, and everything is it's just going like it should. I know sometimes I've seen videos, people will run a string down the main spar to make sure that it's not wiggling, but I have found that by cautiously moving forward and really understanding what needs to be done, that the spar has stayed true when I've done this process on both of these wings. So I mean, it's pretty easy to look down that spar and tell that everything is nice and straight and true. So so now here, just a little bit of final tweaking on this bay, because sometimes you'll find that at the very last thing you need to do, there's a little bit of additional tension for overall tension on the wires, or still trying to get just a little tweak so that you get the diagonal measurement to match. And again, these very pointy points dropping down into those very precisely placed indentations in the spar create an extremely accurate way of determining whether or not everything is in its proper place. Now, the other thing I'm going to do, still planning to do though, is that my shop isn't big enough to put the wings on the airplane inside the shop. Again, if you're not familiar with this project, I'm not going to do the final assembly. That'll take place back over in Ohio. So, but I'm going to take the fuselage and the wing at a time out and make sure that they do mate up properly to the attach fittings on the fuselage. Because if for some reason any aspect of, because I didn't put those marks on the spars, if for any reason those are a little bit out of place, then maybe there will be some tension in the attach bolts trying to fit to hold the wing onto the fuselage, and you don't want that. So before it's covered with fabric, you're going to want to have to make an adjustment. Now, I don't expect it's going to need an adjustment, but this is just a really good thing to do to be absolutely certain. Here I am, I think, out there at the outboard section. This is my final thing to do at this point, because I just wanted to verify that all the way at the other end things are still in their proper place, and it was. So that was all pretty very satisfying that it actually went that well, and it really didn't take all that much time. So I don't know, everybody's different in the way they would think this through, and I'm certainly not saying I'm doing it the best way, but all things considered, it just really seemed to go extremely well, and that's a nice thing to have out of the way again on this second wing. So there you have it. It went really well. I got this whole wing trammeled in about 40 minutes, and no complications. A couple times maybe chasing my tail where I was going the wrong way, but you can tell that very quick by double checking. That's kind of the process there, of constantly double checking to see what's going on, where you're at, and that, I think, makes it work out pretty darn well. I think that's a pretty quick process for what can seem like a fairly complicated thing to accomplish. So anyway, I'm hoping then yet this week to get the other leading edges made for this wing and get them in place. So what I'll probably try to do is some video of that, so that can be next week's video that'll show a little bit more detail than I did previously when I did this wing over here on the leading edge. So that's the plan, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.